for my card, you need obviously the second one. Yours will have a label on it that says Card Kit 2. You need that. You'll need your scrap from earlier. We need our garden party embossing folder. And then we also do need the rectangle mask. And I'm using the one with the smaller opening. So have those things handy. And I will be embossing, so if you have that stuff tucked anywhere, grab that out. And I'm going to walk you through how to make this card. I love embossing just sugar cube cardstock and taking a blender brush or whatever your favorite blender is to blend ink over the top of it, because all those raised areas grab that ink and just, it's a more intense color, it's darker. I just think it's really cool. So it's a very easy, simple way to get a little more mileage out of your embossing folders. It's just to add a little bit of color. So in your embossing, actually I apologize, in your instructions, this is actually the first part of step 2, but I like to do it first. I'm going to have you grab this inside mask to the stencil, grab this part, and we're gonna go ahead and spray it with pixie spray. I really like to get pixie spray on it and let it set to dry, just so it's drying while I'm doing other things. So if you're new with pixie spray, right here on the back, they're really good instructions. Sometimes we grab our new accessories and we just kind of run with it, but the instructions here tell you to shake it well and to spray it 12 inches away. And you do not need to saturate your stencil, just give it a very light coating. That's totally will be good enough. So I'm going to go do mine over the trash can because I don't want to get all of the table all sticky. It's just barely sticky, and then you want to let it set to dry. So in your card kit baggie, you have the card base that's obviously folded, and then you have another piece of white sugar cube cardstock that's 4 by 5 1/4. That's the one we're going to emboss. So take that and put the other items aside. So you'll take this piece of sugar cube cardstock and you're just going to center it inside your embossing folder. And then just kind of eyeball it that all around here is even. Get it centered in there, kind of close it, that helps. Luckily this isn't like a hard line in the inside here, so if you don't have it perfect, it won't be any big deal. So I'm going to set up my Sizzix to the tab for embossing folders. And this one here at TE is well loved, and I actually like it to have this tab 1 down, which isn't the way it's supposed to be, but over time the tension kind of lets go a little bit. Sorry, Taylor, incoming. Just warning you. Incoming. And then take it apart and just put it back for die cutting, because that's what we're going to use it for in just a little bit. So in your embossing folder, we're going to open that up, and then, isn't that pretty? It's just pretty all on its own. Grab a couple of pieces. I like to get ahead of myself here and grab a couple of pieces of purple tape. You don't need much. It's just for temporary, just to help us real quick. Take your rectangle mask, and again, just like Taylor kind of walked you through already, make sure your etching is up. Also make sure your embossing on your cardstock is facing up. And we're going to lay those on top of each other. And you're going to center this white sugar cube cardstock in and align it with that inside line. Align that up, flip it over. I love how I have my cheaters on top of my head. I'm always like, I can't see. How about I put them on? I'm just going to double check now that I did put on my cheaters. That's perfect. So take this mask and lay it with the pixie sprayed side down onto your sugar cube cardstock and press it into place. And just this gets peeled up. Oh, maybe I didn't put enough pixie spray. I was being really light-handed with it. There we go. Then we're going to ink blend. I'm going to start with the pineapple ink, and I said this earlier, my rule is to only have the ink pad out and the brush out that you're using with the lid off. So again, like Taylor said, I like to take and use my brushes in a circular motion, and I use them when I'm blending. I usually have a piece of scratch paper so that I can blend onto my cardstock, from my scratch paper onto my cardstock. And let me grab my card. And I'm going to blend, starting with the pineapple, starting from the bottom left to the top right corner. And the reason why I like to start with my lightest color is just to preserve my brush, mainly for my light color, and also because I'm going to cover a little less than a half, a little over a third of this with my pineapple ink. And the reason why I do that is because I find if I try to come in last with my light color, I've almost lost the space for it. This way, at least I put down my light color, and I'm hopefully preserving some space on my card for it. So I'm going to do a little over a third, almost a half of my card will be pineapple, and then I can come in later with the confetti and the guava and blend over some of that, and then I'll get more color. I'll get a variation of those colors where they blend together. So circle motion with my blender brush on top of my ink pad, and then when I apply it to my cardstock, I also use kind of a circular motion as I put it down. And like I said, I start off my cardstock on the scratch paper and move on to my project. So that's my pineapple. I'm pretty happy with that. I would say it's almost half. So then I'll move to my confetti cake. And this one is a little harder to build up. It's such a light color that I'll use a little bit heavier hand with this one. But still working circle motions, work off on my scratch paper onto my cardstock or my project. So do you see where this is overlapping? Now I'm getting a green. That's one of my favorite things about blending, is seeing what other colors you can blend and get.
Yeah, I love that color blend you're getting is kind of almost like a mint.
It is.
I think it's because of your light hand.
I am light-handed.
Mine would be like lime.
Well, and you'll see on the last project, Taylor uses guava, and it comes out just totally different color from what I...
In a very intense way.
They're both good. Yeah, they're both great. I think one more time. Sorry. I love these new brushes. I think they make us look like those airbrush artists that I always wanted to be with the Copics. Can't do it. Then my last color that I'm going to come in with is guava. And I'm not even going to open it yet because I know Taylor did the last project with guava and she probably loaded up the brush. I might not even need to. So I do, when I come in with guava, I give it a little buff onto my scratch paper so that I don't have any crazy dark spots when I come into my actual project. I might have to add some, but I just like to be light-handed about it. The guava is one of those that goes dark really fast. So I definitely hit my scratch paper first before I go to my project. And then this gives this beautiful coral color where it overlaps to the pineapple. Isn't that pretty?
Yeah.
I love it.
You get a really nice pink effect, and I think with the guava, it really brings out the embossed parts, maybe
Doesn't
more
it?
than the other colors.
I agree. I love it. And then you can peek, if you want, to see where you're at. Take my tool here, and I can see I really like the color, so I'm going to go with it. But just peel this up really slowly, and remember that this is a non-porous surface, so you could get a little ink on your finger, so just be careful when you pull this up that you don't touch your panel. And we're going to set that aside. If you have any residue left over from the Pixie spray, this adhesive remover square is awesome for that. It's great for if you ever have, adhesive ooze out of, a die cut or whatever, but it's also awesome for this because you can, any of that little bit of residue that gets left behind, picks it right up. You can't even feel it anymore. The next thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to do the butterflies, and I'm not going to use the Misty, so we're going to grab some acrylic blocks. And I used the same two butterflies Taylor did, but I'm going to put mine on blocks. So grab that scratch paper and your Oreo ink. And again, we're going to die cut from this, so you don't want them too close. Stamp both of them down. They are kind of a distressed, artsy looking die cut, so they stamp really well. Then, so that's the Oreo of both of those. Then we're going to do the fills, which is the clear. You want the guava, which I did mine opposite of Taylor's. We said we should have gotten together on this and we wouldn't have had to clean. And I did the bigger one in guava and the smaller one in pineapple. Put them on your acrylic blocks. And these fills are not, what do I want to say, perfectly filled in. They're more the distressed. So you can look straight through to see that that is centered on there. That purple tape I used earlier, I can use to hold my dies in place. So grab both of them. Make sure, with those antennae, make sure they're peeking through. That's one of your best checks. Use some temporary tape to hold them down. Let's do this other one. If you spaced them out far enough, you should be able to fit both your dies together. You can send it through in one pass. Cut those out. What did we do before dies? All this fussy cutting, right? So we've got our butterflies in our background. So the next part that we want to work on is our sentiment strip. I'm going to also use a clear block to put our sentiments down. One of my favorite things, I'm going to borrow this just for a second. Yeah. Is if you have a block that has the lines on it, even stamping your sentiment can be easy. So I'm going to take this line, I have it, the etched line looking up at me, and I can center, or align I should say, align that line to the top of the U and the top of the C. So we're going to grab, if you have an embossing powder, powder pal, whatever you have, run that over your cardstock, or a paintbrush and some baby powder, whatever your favorite thing is to do before you emboss to get rid of like the staticiness and any little oils that might come off your hand. I'm going to use my Versamark ink pad and that sentiment. Center, and then I can look through and I can use that straight line to know I'm putting my sentiment on there straight. Okay. And you can't really see it, but you'll see it once I get the embossing powder on there. I like to take just a scratch piece of paper and shake my embossing powder on it. Whatever old notebooks your kids bring home or papers from school, shake on some embossing powder. Funnel that back in, and then I'm going to grab a tweezers if you have something. This is awfully small, so you might want that just to hold on to it. Now, embossing is literally one of my favorite things, and it's what started me stamping. I just love the magic of it. So the first thing I like to do is heat up my tool. Let it run a little bit before you take it to the die cut, because you don't want to blow all that powder off while it's heating up. And then I heat up the back side of my paper a little bit. If you've ever worked with a really chunky glitter, this honestly really works. To heat up the back and then go to the front of it. And then I don't put my heat tool very close to my project because you can literally burn cardstock. And then I work from one end all the way to the other until I see that it's embossed. And I'm going to show you this if you can see it in the camera. The C, if you look, looks kind of grainy and dull. Can you see that? It's not all the way embossed. So I'm going to come in and just finish it off. So now do you see how it's shiny and smooth? Just make sure everything looks like that before you decide that you're done. Let it cool. And there you go, your pretty little sentiment. And we're going to assemble our card then. That's all of our parts and pieces. I'm going to use some just tape runner to adhere this part. So, like Taylor said, make sure your fold's at the top, but that's just I've done it so many times. Just double check, it's worth it. Center that on your sugar cube card base. We're gonna bring in some, I popped both the banner and the butterflies up, but your card, if you like things more flat, go for that. I used some of these awesome foam squares off the roll. But I like them, and they're right. The backing of these peels off beautifully.
Yes, they have the perfect little lip on
Yeah.
the edge to grab those backing stickers off.
I agree. The other thing is I love Taylor's grid mat because it really helps with your eyeballing. To take, like I'm going to follow this 4 line all the way across here. Just to help make sure I'm going straight. So I can go from there and my eye can follow all the way over here. That the flag is going straight across. And then the last thing is my butterflies. I like to take their little bodies and kind of fold right where their bodies are on the butterfly. That way if I want to pop them up and make their wings look like they're flying, I can do that. Fold them a little bit. I'm going to take one of these foam squares and cut it in half because that's the perfect size that goes right down the middle of their body. I like to make the wing kind of touch that banner a little bit. I feel like it brings the whole center of the card together. So I'll do the same when I bring my guava in. There we go. And that's my card.